Hello again, and welcome back to year 4 of the Religious Education Initiative. This is week 49, day 1. We're continuing through the book of Ezra. So last time, we saw the history of the return of the remnant of the people of God, that is to say, descendants of the tribes of Judah and Benjamin and Levi, to Jerusalem, where they laid the foundations of the temple and began the work of rebuilding it as they renewed the order of worship and sacrifices there on the site. We saw, too, that even when the temple was completed, God did not return to dwell in the temple, but the people were, as it seemed, trying very hard to be faithful to God, even though he had not returned. This time we will see Ezra the priest come from Persia to join them and what work he has to accomplish there among them. So, this is chapter 7 of Ezra. After this, in the reign of King Artaxerxes of Persia, Ezra, son of Seraiah, son of Azariah, son of Hilkiah, son of Shallum, son of Zadok, son of Ahitub, son of Amariah, son of Azariah, son of Meraioth, son of Zerahiah, son of Uzi, son of Buki, son of Abishua, son of Phinehas, son of Eleazar, son of the chief priest Aaron. This Ezra went up from Babylonia. He was a scribe, skilled in the law of Moses that the Lord, the God of Israel, had given, and the king granted him all that he asked, for the hand of the Lord his God was upon him. Some of the people of Israel, and some of the priests and Levites, the singers and the gatekeepers, and the temple servants, also went up to Jerusalem in the 7th year of King Artaxerxes. They came to Jerusalem in the 5th month, which was in the 7th year of the king. On the 1st day of the 1st month, the journey up from Babylon was begun. And on the 1st day of the 5th month, he came to Jerusalem, for the gracious hand of his God was upon him. For Ezra had set his heart to study the law of the Lord, and to do it, and to teach the statutes and ordinances in Israel. This is a copy of the letter that King Artaxerxes gave to the priest Ezra, the scribe, a scholar of the text of the commandments of the Lord and his statutes for Israel. So this is the letter. Artaxerxes, king of kings, to the priest Ezra, the scribe of the law of the God of heaven. Peace. And now I decree that any of the people of Israel, or their priests or Levites in my kingdom, who freely offers to go to Jerusalem, may go with you, for you are sent by the king and his 7 counselors to make inquiries about Judah and Jerusalem, according to the law of your God which is in your hand. And then the letter continues by outlining the substantial resources that the king is sending along with Ezra, all of it out of the king's treasury, and it further directing that the priests and the temple shall be exempt from taxes. He then continues, and you, Ezra, according to the God-given wisdom you possess, appoint magistrates and judges who may judge all the people in the province beyond the river, who know the laws of your God, and you shall teach those who do not know them. All who will not obey the law of your God and the law of the king, let judgment be strictly executed on them, whether for death or for banishment or for confiscation of their goods or for imprisonment. And that's the end of the letter. Ezra continues, Blessed be the Lord, the God of our ancestors, who put such a thing as this into the heart of the king, to glorify the house of the Lord in Jerusalem, and who extended to me steadfast love before the king and his counselors, and before all the king's mighty officers. I took courage, for the hand of the Lord my God was upon me, and I gathered leaders from Israel to go up with me. And then there's an enumeration, a listing of all the people who came with Ezra from Persia. This is the entire content of chapter 8, so we'll skip that. Then chapter 9. Ezra has arrived now. After these things had been done, the officials approached me and said, The people of Israel, the priests and the Levites, have not separated themselves from the peoples of the lands with their abominations, from the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Jebusites, the Ammonites, the Moabites, the Egyptians, and the Amorites. For they have taken some of their daughters as wives for themselves and for their sons. Thus the holy seed has mixed itself with the peoples of the lands, and in this faithlessness the officials and the leaders have led the way. When I heard this, I tore my garment and my mantle, and I pulled hair from my head and beard, and I sat appalled. Then all who trembled at the words of the God of Israel, because of the faithlessness of the returned exiles, gathered around me, while I sat appalled until the evening sacrifice. Okay, so we actually didn't talk about this last time, so we need to talk a little bit. We saw last time when they established the foundation of the temple and they started offering the sacrifices again, they sang the psalm rejoicing, Blessed be the Lord, for his mercy endures forever, that David had written. They did everything as far as they could tell, like David had said it needed to be done when he was preparing for Solomon to dedicate the first temple. All those things they did. But the old people who remembered the old house of God, they wept because God was not present, because it was not the same thing. And when Solomon dedicated the temple the first time, the cloud, like had led the people through Israel, it descended on the temple, and God clearly had inhabited the place. And this did not happen when they dedicated the temple again. So they're back in Jerusalem, they're back in the temple. It's been rebuilt, or it's being rebuilt, because Ezra gets there, it seems, while it's still being finished or perfected. This is an ongoing work. It doesn't finish until the time of Christ, the time of Herod the king. But they know that God hasn't come back. God has left them. Ezekiel the prophet actually talks about this, and maybe we'll get a chance to read some of that as well. But they know that God hasn't returned to them, and they're wondering why. So Ezra comes now. He's the priest. He comes. He sets up. He's ready. He's rejoicing. And they say, by the way, things aren't going great because a lot of us have actually intermarried with the peoples of the land. And we'll talk about this a little bit more next week, but we need to understand, why is it a problem for them to intermarry? It's not just that this isn't an ethnic thing. This isn't a racial thing. This isn't, oh my goodness, we married someone who isn't a Jew. God forbid, right? Because God did forbid it. But he forbade it not because there's something about Jewish blood or heritage that is perfect, but because these people have entered into marriages without these wives, and then the children of these wives becoming part of the household of faith. They have not renounced their worship of the pagan gods. They have not laid aside the practices which had corrupted the people and led them to destruction. And these are not like, we're not saying, oh, you used to throw salt over your shoulder sometimes. That's superstition. God hates that. No, we're talking about sacrificing living children to pagan gods. We're talking about a bronze idol of Chemosh, I believe, is the moon god of Moab, that they would light a fire inside of, and then the hands would be white hot, and they would place a living child in the hands of that god to be destroyed for the sake of fertility, for the sake of prosperity, for the sake of whatever. These are the practices that the Israelites had learned from the peoples who lived in the land. These are the things that had corrupted them. This is the reason that God had judged them and had given them over into the hands of Nebuchadnezzar, and they've been in captivity for all those years. So this is why Ezra sits down, shocked, appalled. He's tearing his beard and his hair out. He's tearing his clothes. He's sitting in the ash pile, grieving that 70 years of captivity, 20 more waiting for Darius to finally let them keep building, and then another 20 years that Darius reigns until Artaxerxes, his son, is reigning. So it's been 110 years in exile, and we're still not learning the lesson. We're still doing exactly the same things as we had done before, and this isn't going to stand. But this is why he's mourning in this way. So, anyway, because the point of Israel, we have to understand, is that they are God's priestly people. Their purpose is to purify and bring the nations back to God. So it's fine for a Moabite woman, for an Ammonite woman, to marry a Jewish man if she does what Rahab did and renounces her people's gods and pledges herself in faithfulness and obedience to the God of Israel. This is what needs to happen, but it's not been happening. So anyway, God bless you all. We'll see you shortly for day 2.